back to an episode of Question Period. Today is June 17th, 2025, not 2026, which is what I accidentally prepped the stream to be. So a lot of people who joined the stream before it went live, it said it would be going live in 365 days. Whoops, that's actually the second time in 7 days that I've done that. My bad, I'll try to be better. Anyways, not 365 days later, but only a few minutes later, we are now live. So there's a lot of stuff to take a look at today, including, but not limited to, obviously, Question Period. Also focusing on the war because shit's about to go down. You've got China meeting with Russia, Russia meeting with North Korea, North Korea meeting with China. There's just a whole bunch of people that are meeting on the back end of things. You also have America pretty much ready to strike Iran any moment because they're building nuclear stuff when they shouldn't be, above and beyond just power for civilians. They're building nuclear weapons. Yeah, so tensions are pretty high. Chances are you already know that, though. That's why Trump left the G7 yesterday. And no, it wasn't because of what Macron said, which should be to discuss a ceasefire deal between Iran and Israel, but more because they're on high alert, high-ish alert. So yeah, we're going to be taking a look at that. Also, Canadian news, Doug Ford is starting to be a little bit more conservative. That's kind of interesting. We have a recap of how Canada is spending more money on Ukraine because Zelensky's now at the G7, and we have more sanctions on Russia, but we don't know exactly how much money that's going to be costing us. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. A lot of money being thrown around, a lot of smoke and mirrors, so to speak, being put up. But we're going to get through everything, and I think we have enough time before Question Period begins. So before we get into it, I do want to encourage you guys. Come on. Hit the like button. Don't make me ask. Don't make me beg. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. And let's get right into this, shall we? We're going to start off with a recap of the build up to where we are right now with the war, with the tensions as to where they are and how high they are between Iran and Israel. But to understand that, you have to understand that the other side, the other guys, the bad guys, are also meeting amongst themselves. Russia and Kim Jong-un are meeting to discuss, military technical operations, among other things.
Очень рад. А мы что подготовим? Прошло 2 недели.
Bad guy stuff. More bad guy stuff. Yeah, we're not going to pretend like we know what the hell they're saying. But the fact that they are meeting, the fact that Russia and China are meeting to literally discuss the ongoing conflict between Iran and Israel is a little scary. Justin, North Korea is sending 6,000 soldiers and combat engineers to help rebuild war-hit areas in Russia. Okay. Also, Donald Trump yesterday on Air Force One, when he left Canada's G7 summit to head back to Washington, D.C., said this.
What specifically is better than a ceasefire? What are you looking for here?
An end. A real end, not a ceasefire. An end.
So something that will be permanent.
Yeah. Or giving up entirely. That's okay too.
Are you close there? Is that possible in the next 24
Why not? Certainly possible. Complete give up. That's possible, yeah.
What specific?
I do want to focus on something as well. You have Donald Trump's pin right here. It's the American flag. And then it's the half American, well, they're not half, but the pin itself is divided on the American flag and the Canadian flag, side by side, intertwined. That's awesome to see the president be doing that. What does our prime minister do? He doesn't even wear a Canadian pin. He wears something else, right? Something else. It's just weird. It's just weird, man, that even the president of the United States seems to somehow be a little bit more patriotic than the Canadian prime minister. But anyways, that's a story for another day. Here is reports of Russian President Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping hold a phone call to discuss the Israel and Iran war. because tensions are absolutely skyrocketing, and everyone who has a form of involvement or a potential form of involvement is prepping for what seems to be the inevitable. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. Pentagon source told Al Jazeera that B-52 bombers, plural, are now on the Indian Ocean island of Diego Garcia within flying range of Iran. And you can see here, someone says, what are B-52 bombers used for? Tagging Grok. Hey, good question. The B-52 bombers are versatile beasts. Think of them as the Swiss Army knives of the skies. Originally built to haul nuclear payloads during the Cold War to keep the Soviets on their toes, they've evolved into multi-role heavy hitters. Today, they can drop precision-guided conventional bombs, launch cruise missiles, or just flex their muscles with 70,000-pound payloads. With that range putting Iran in striking distance from Diego Garcia, it's no surprise they're stirring the pot again. Probably a not so subtle message to someone. I'd wager they're also used for psychological warfare. Nothing screams we are serious like a buff lumbering overhead. Stay skeptical, though. Pentagon leaks Al Jazeera could be legit or could be a well-timed flex to rattle cages. What do you think is brewing, says Grok AI. Well, it does kind of match with other press conference releases or Pentagon or White House releases as to what America is actually doing. U.S. Air Force F-52s and F-53s or F-35s are en route to the Middle East to boost regional defenses. Breaking, the Pentagon has announced that it is moving more fighter jets to the Middle East. Something major is about to happen, says Raw Alerts. Breaking, Iran calls on Israelis to evacuate Tel Aviv and Haifa immediately, which could be their way of reiterating the response or reciprocating the response of basically everybody telling their own people to get out of Tehran because of, you know, what could have potentially just happened. Then you also have OSINT defenders saying, according to CNN, the U.S. military is preparing for the possibility that President Trump decides to order the U.S. Air Force to help refuel Israeli fighter jets as they carry out strikes over Iran. As one of several options expected to be presented to Trump during the ongoing meeting with his National Security Council, another option being joint strikes against nuclear facilities inside Iran by the U.S. and Israel, which is going to get quite ugly because Pakistan has already said that if the U.S. gets involved, they're going to be nuking. Now, does America have the ability with all of its resources like that are been deployed to the Middle East to block a nuke from Pakistan? Likely, but if Pakistan joins in, that could trigger a response from China and Russia and or North Korea and or their allies. So yeah, I mean, this is an ongoing situation. And it seems like we're going to have answers later today, or instead of answers, we're going to witness something. The United States officials say that President Trump is seriously considering a strike on Iran ahead of crucial Situation Room meeting scheduled for 1 p.m. Eastern today. So we're going to know more later today, maybe by the end of question period and some more G7 updates that happened today. We're going to have more answers. Or we're going to witness something that would absolutely make or break history. Anyways, I would love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. Do you think America is going to get involved? Do you think they are not going to get involved? If they do get involved, where do you think this is heading? Let me know your guys' thoughts down below. And to shift over to Canadian news, you've got MP, or I guess now soon to be previous MP, Damien, who is announcing his official resignation for his seat in the House of Commons so that a by-election be called as soon as possible to allow for our Conservative Party leader, Pierre Poilievre, to run in Battle River Crowfoot and earn a seat in the House of Commons where he will continue fighting for Canadians and holding the Liberal government to account. Damien goes on to say that it's been a tremendous honor to serve the people of Battle River as their member of parliament, as been their member of parliament since 2019. So there you go. I mean, it seems like it is happening right now. He's resigning, and Pierre is going to be stepping in sometime in August to run that by-election. Anyways, love to know what you guys think about that. There is quite a bit of controversy with Pierre Poilievre right now, specifically with a leadership review that it's not out of the normal. Okay, so let's just get this out of the way right now. Pierre Poilievre is facing a leadership review in January. It's not like an impromptu leadership review. It was already pre-scheduled. It was set in the books and set in stone already. But that is taking place in January of 2026. And that would give the Conservatives an extra 3 years to either continue with Pierre Poilievre or to go with somebody new. Now, this gets very controversial because I've noticed, even with my own audience, that people are not well receptive of criticism towards Pierre Poilievre, even when it's constructive criticism. So I'm just going to pass the question off to you instead of stating my opinion. What do you think should happen with Pierre Poilievre? An MP is now officially resigning, giving Pierre that space to be the Conservative Party leader and actually run as an MP and run his party as he sees fit. Do you think that Pierre is the best suited to continue in that leadership role, or do you think that maybe they should reevaluate that sooner than January 2026 and maybe bring somebody in? Because I've noticed an ongoing trend. It seems like when you look at the Conservative Party, there isn't anyone that stands out as much as Pierre Poilievre. Pierre does seem to be the best suited for leadership material. I mean, the guy completely rebranded himself. He went from total nerd with glasses to "Excuse me, Mr. Speaker" to, getting a little bit more buff, campaigning without his glasses, bringing his family, his wife, his kids on board. He really started to show true conservative values that you never really had the chance to see before. Now, maybe that's what comes with the territory of being the conservative leader, is you're in the spotlight more, so we get to see more of who you are, or it's that in conjunction with a whole rebranding, which seems to be more likely than not likely. So again, Pierre's put a lot of effort into himself, making sure that he's a good leader, making sure that he's up to date on his very quick responses in the House, which seems to be where he thrives. Pierre's specialty is his ability to go mega viral. And that actually comes from the pleb. I had a recent conversation with the pleb on the phone, and he is making a comeback sometime this week, so stay tuned for that. But the pleb actually is the one who said that originally, where he thinks that Pierre's specialty is his ability to go mega viral, eating an apple in front of a reporter, all that stuff, his quick responses, wacko Trudeau, and all that stuff. Is that what's going to win against Mark Carney in the future, or is that day and age past? We're going to have to wait and see. But again, I'd love to know your guys' thoughts and comments down below. Next up, we're going to take a look here at Doug Ford. Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, has faced heavy criticism by yours truly. And now it seems like he's experienced something that is a little bit more personal to him, and it's changing his views. We're talking about our weak judicial system. You know, the whole jail, not bail thing that the Conservatives campaigned on? Well, it's very unfortunate that Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, which was a massive swing province, I guess, it was kind of the make or break of the election, how the Premier of Ontario, who's a Conservative, didn't actually openly endorse Pierre Poilievre. And now we're finding out that he almost wishes that he did. Let's take a look at this story. It's very interesting.
Well, this definitely caught reporters, even members of Doug Ford's own staff, off guard that he would be the target of would-be car thieves. Keep in mind that the Premier has around-the-clock protection from the OPP. The Premier made this revelation during the middle of a rant about his frustrations with the bail system. He talked about a bust in Peel region last week, the biggest ever when it comes to drugs, where roughly $50 million worth of cocaine was seized. All but one of the people charged in that case are already out on bail, and the Premier says that has to change, demanding the federal government tighten up rules, again slamming what he calls weak-kneed judges. That's when he got into that very scary situation at his home.
Now, I'm going to tell you a story, probably get in trouble for this. You want to hear about stupid criminals? Have you ever seen that show about stupid criminals out there? So 4 thugs come racing down my street, masks on, ready to take the car out of the driveway. Surprise, surprise, at 12:30, the 2 police cars are there. The chase is on. So they chase him. One guy runs out, takes off. They capture him, and they catch these other guys. But just imagine all the unfortunate people that don't have security there at their house with masks on, and they had all the tools ready to break in and everything, you know, and guess what's going to happen? They're going to be back out. Why don't you guys come over for a barbecue tonight? You know, I'll take care of you better than the police. And thank God the police got you, and I never did. Anyways, that's my rant. I'm sick and tired of the weak justice system that we have. They have to get a backbone, and we need to start throwing these people in jail. This is turning into a lawless society.
There was a whole lot more to that rant. The Premier suggested that Canada should have a law that allows people to defend their homes if they're under attack, something similar to we see in some U.S. states. He also talked about launching a fundraiser for a man in Vaughan who shot to try to scare off would-be car thieves from his home last week. That man is now facing gun charges, including possession of a prohibited or restricted weapon. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris.
Well. How the turns of table, Dougie boy. This is exactly what Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Federal Party campaigned on and warned Canadians on. And people don't believe it until it hits close to home, to a loved one, a family member, a friend, or themselves. And here we are, poor Dougie boy, a little defenseless, going, people are trying to steal my cars. We got to crack down on this stuff. Yeah, we tried. We tried telling you, and you didn't listen. Instead, you were trying to suck at the teeth of Mark Carney instead of doing your due diligence, almost your responsibility as a Conservative premier, and endorsing Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative federal candidate for Prime Minister. Shame on you. Shame on you. Anyways, stories like this are becoming more and more frequent. Now, I don't have it pulled up, but Calgary police last night did issue a warning that there was an increase in break-and-enters. And what are you supposed to do during a break-and-enter? Give the thieves what they want. There is no castle law in Canada. You don't really have the right to defend yourself. You do, but you don't. If somebody breaks into your home and you take action on that person, chances are you'll get sued. People are afraid to defend themselves from physical threats, and they're afraid to defend their family from physical threats. They're afraid to defend their own property from physical threats or theft and stuff like that. It's wild what's going on in Canada. We've tried to put that messaging out, but people don't seem to care because, Pierre is like the Trump of the North, said the CBC, which affected the entire election. Wow. Anyways, love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about that. Do you think this is a reality check for Doug Ford and Ontarians, or do you think that they're just going to go back to being the same liberal cucks that they've been? Love to know what you guys think. Next up, we're going to take a look at Zelensky and Mark Carney at the G7 summit. It turns out that Zelensky still couldn't find himself a suit after his visit to the Oval Office with Trump and J.D. Vance, where, remember that whole thing where he didn't even say thank you, which is controversially funny. Well, Zelensky made himself almost a suit. I don't know. Almost there, buddy. Almost there. Good job, ish. Anyways, let's listen to what these guys have to say.
I would like to start by condemning, in the strongest terms, the latest outrage, barbarism from Russia, and express my deep condolences, and those of the Canadian people, to the families in Kyiv who were affected. This underscores the importance of standing in total solidarity with Ukraine, with the Ukrainian people. And we had a discussion last night amongst G7 leaders. The President and I will discuss more, and then of course we'll have the direct discussion in a moment together. But we underscored the importance of using maximum pressure against Russia, who has refused to come to the table. The President has led unconditionally to come to the table in search of peace. And maximum pressure.
Oh my goodness. I didn't watch this before I selected it to watch. We're watching this organically together for the first time. And I almost wish that I had like a beer next to me, even though it's not beer o'clock yet. I know somewhere it is in the world, but not where I am. I almost wish I had a beer. I took a sip every time he said, because it feels like he says it more than Justin Trudeau. I could be wrong, or it could be right.
Includes financial pressure, and Canada is announcing today several measures, sanctions, first and foremost, against a number of individuals in Russia, against over 40 entities in Russia and beyond that are trying to contribute to the evasion of sanctions, the sanctioning of over 200 vessels in the shadow fleet that Russia is using, again, to try to evade these sanctions. That's the first thing. The second is we are providing additional military assistance, drones, helicopters, broader munitions, over $2 billion worth of assistance directly to Ukraine. And thirdly, we are dispersing the next tranche of the loan based on the frozen Russian assets, over $2 billion as well. This is our contribution. We'll be working with our European and other allies for their contributions to provide this.
So, important to note, it's not just $2 billion that we are sending. It's $2 billion of our own money, and then $2.3 billion of frozen Russian assets. Yikes. $4.3 billion in support for Ukraine as Carney and Zelensky meet at the G7. Oh mon Dieu.
That turning point where the world looks to this table for leadership around that starts around
some of the most powerful people in the world gathering in Alberta in Kananaskis for the G7.
And more free.
And the global economy is at the center of today's discussion. Joining us now from Kananaskis is our Glenn McGregor. Glenn, Mark Carney's first order of business here is meeting with President Donald Trump. What came of that?
Yeah, that was even before the summit officially began. This was really the crucial meeting for Mark Carney. Of all the leaders he's going to be meeting with, there's most at stake in this meeting. And it began on kind of a bizarre note because Trump came out and went on this rant, standing next to Mark Carney in their meeting room, a rant about Vladimir Putin and Russia and how they should be returned, reinstated in the G7. Of course, they used to be part of what was called the G8. And then when Putin decided to annex Crimea back in 2014, the G7 decided as a group they're going to kick Russia out, and they're going to have their G7 that year was supposed to be in Russia, but actually decided to have it in Belgium instead, and Russia has never returned since. There's no appetite to do this. But Trump blamed former U.S. President Barack Obama for that decision, and he also blamed former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, which doesn't make any sense because Trudeau wasn't Prime Minister at the time. He was a year later that he was first elected. It was Stephen Harper who was in power then. But then they eventually turned to the issue at hand.
I mean, to be fair, he is a United States president, so he's not really keeping tabs on every single prime minister and what year they started and ended. It was just off the fly, off the cuff. And it's easy to blame things on Trudeau. The only people that keep mentioning Harper are the Liberals from over 10 years ago. So, yeah, it's a bit of an oopsie. But anyways, we fact-checked that on a previous live stream in real time using ChatGPT. And the second point is that Trump didn't just go on a rant. He was being asked questions from reporters, if I'm not mistaken. So he's answering reporters. It was more embarrassing for Mark Carney, who stood there next to the president, not getting any questions from reporters, and eventually going, excuse me, but I'm the chair of the G7, and I say that this press conference is over. And then President Trump taps him on the elbow going, yeah, it's okay. Sure, buddy, you can end it. Let's go have lunch or something, right? He asked Trump's permission to end it. It is so embarrassing. We all saw it.
And that, of course, is trade. Trump said that he still thinks there's a possibility that they can work out some kind of deal between Canada and the U.S. to remove those tariffs on multiple sectors, but he allowed that there are some differences in his approach to trade compared to Mark Carney. This is what Trump had to say.
Our primary focus will be trade and trade with Canada, and I'm sure we can work something out. I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly. And I think Mark has a more complex idea, but also very good.
Obviously, tariffs are the #1 issue for Canada, but for the G7 as a whole, there are many world threats to discuss, including conflicts overseas and the escalating violence between Israel and Iran. What did we hear from President Trump about that?
Yeah, these are issues that are really dominating the summit, and Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, is supposed to be coming. There's going to be lots of discussion about this. Is now the 4th time that the G7 has met to try and deal with the issue of Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, and then there's the situation in Gaza. Now, at the beginning of that meeting between Carney and Trump, of course, there are American reporters. The White House traveling press pool is in the meeting there as well. Gets a chance to ask questions along with the Canadians, and they wanted to know from Trump whether or not he sees a way that the U.S. might get involved in this ongoing conflict, this now shooting war between Israel and Iran. This is what the president had to say.
What would you say, in your opinion, what would it take for the U.S. to get involved in this conflict militarily?
I don't want to talk about that.
So he doesn't want to talk about it for quite obvious reasons, because that would put the United States in a difficult position. He maintains that Iran should have been more cooperative, seeking a deal on their nuclear program with the United States. Of course, remember when Trump was president the first time, that he basically tore up the deal that Barack Obama had signed. So there doesn't seem to be like an immediate hope for that.
Glenn McGregor in Kananaskis. Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks.
Okay, so yeah, it seems like everybody at the G7 was there to speak with President Trump, and now that he's gone, you'd think that everything at the G7 would be kind of cool, but it's not. It turns out that India, which has been historically invited since 2019 for reasons that I don't actually know off the top of my head, is now being excluded at the G7 after arriving. So Indian PM Modi removed from G7 summit main event in Canada, not included in the group photo. Very interesting, since he's been this special guest for so long, and now he's being excluded. And it seems like Ukraine is getting a little bit more attention than Modi. So again, we're gonna have to wait and see how this does play out. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Next up, we're gonna take a look here at some of the more ins and outs of what was discussed at the G7 between Carney, Modi, and Zelensky.
To CTV's Colton Prail. He's in Banff for us. Colton, so let's talk about these meetings ahead for the Prime Minister, beginning with that crucial meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky. Of course, everybody was hoping that Trump would be there. That's not the case now. But what is expected to happen during that sit-down?
This was one of the key elements of the G7 summit that was really important for the Canadian officials, or for Canadian officials going into this meeting, and certainly prior to the escalation of the conflict we saw between Iran and Israel. This was supposed to be one of the main pieces of the framework of these discussions, was not just sovereignty around the world, but support for Ukraine, and an opportunity to speak frankly with the U.S. president in front of a number of allies who support Ukraine and have been very vocal about that support for Ukraine. Obviously, the framework of the these discussions, and the context has changed significantly without Donald Trump being present. We already know that there was supposed to be a one-on-one between Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump. That has obviously been canceled with the American president not being here. And so the goal is still to show support for Ukraine. It's still to find progress that, allies can move forward with regards to ending the conflict in Ukraine. But the big challenge is without the U.S. there, given the outsized role they play in peace talks, given the prominent position they have when it comes to communications with Vladimir Putin, it's going to be difficult to progress things in a meaningful way. Canada, the UK, Germany, France have already been very clear about their support for Ukraine. We've also seen Keir Starmer, for example, very recently backpedaling a little bit when it comes to troops on the ground in Ukraine, saying he would only do it if American forces were also there as well. And so you see that the context really is so American dependent. And the question becomes, how can you have a meaningful meeting or a progressive meeting without the Americans present? And that's the challenge for Mark Carney, not only as the person who invited Volodymyr Zelensky, but as the president of this summit. And it's one that we haven't had an answer from Canadian officials at this point in time. We've put out the request to see, what it is that they're hoping to achieve now that the context is so different, and we still haven't heard from them. We also haven't heard from Mr. Carney in a formal sense as leader of the G7 about how this is all changing without the American president's presence here.
And we should be clear, we know Trump left in 2018 early. He left again early. This time, the important distinction is he did not leave angry. He said that a lot had been achieved. Nonetheless, he said he had to focus on Iran, a bigger priority right now. So he left for Washington. Tell us more about that, Colton.
Yeah, Donald Trump leaving last night very suddenly. He did announce it to the leaders first. We have that confirmed from sources in the PMO. But what you did see was, to your point, Trump leaving in much better spirits than in Charlevoix in 2018. He talked about the good relationships that he had built up here. He talked about the work that was being done on trade deals, but he did say, you understand why I have to go. We heard from Mr. Carney as well, just kind of briefly at the family photo last night, just speaking to reporters who were yelling out questions, saying that he was grateful for Trump's presence here, but that he understands fully why the American president did need to leave. What we did see, though, was more comments from Donald Trump after he had departed on Air Force One last night. And I want to first read you the statement, or a portion of the statement, that was issued after Trump left. Now, Trump says he hadn't seen this statement, but he did agree to sign on to it, and he believes the G7 got the wording correct. And in that statement, it says, and I want to quote here, "We urge that the resolution of the Iranian crisis leads to a broader de-escalation of hostilities in the Middle East, including a ceasefire in Gaza." Now, there was some reporting yesterday that the American president would not sign on to any statements that involve the word de-escalation. Sources in the Prime Minister's office say it was Mr. Carney himself who was able to convince the American president to sign on to that statement, to agree to the use of the word de-escalation. What's interesting, though, is just moments after that statement went out, speaking on Air Force One, Donald Trump said this about a possible ceasefire in Iran. Have a listen.
And then a real end, not a ceasefire. And then
So something that will be permanent.
or giving up entirely.
Yeah, bye-bye. That's what that stands for. We're not interested in a ceasefire. Too little, too late. Anyways, the situation with Trump and Iran and the Middle East is, literally evolving minute by minute. And if something happens, you're going to want to make sure that you got post notifications on, that you're subscribed, and that you're liking this content. Hit the like, because you're not going to want to miss a single update. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a look at question period. Tensions are still very high in the House, even with Mark Carney not potential. Well, he's at the G7, so even without him being there, you still have a fracture in the House where some MPs, liberal and conservative, support unequivocally helping Israel. And some MPs, liberal and NDP, think that we should be not supporting Israel and that we should be supporting Iran. It's very confusing. There's a lot of terrorist sympathizers. A lot. Trudeau was one of them, right? He didn't want to classify the IRGC as a terrorist entity. for whatever reason. Anyways, we're going to take a look at what's going on in the House. But before we do, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn post notifications on so you don't miss a single update from these live streams. And without further ado, let's get right into it, huh? They are currently doing statements by members.
Honorary Canadian citizenship would put pressure on the Hong Kong government to release him. I am one of them, Mr. Speaker, and I sincerely hope that the members of this Parliament will join me in this call.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth, Cole Harbour.
This year marks the 100th anniversary of the Commissionaires, an extraordinary not-for-profit organization that has proudly served Canadians and supported our veterans for a full century. Wow. Founded in 1925 to provide meaningful employment for veterans returning from war, the Commissionaires have grown into one of the largest private security employers in the country, offering thousands of good jobs while continuing their original mission. From protecting federal buildings to supporting local communities, their work is vital. But their impact goes deeper. For countless former members of the Canadian Armed Forces and the RCMP, the Commissionaires offer not just employment, but dignity, purpose, and camaraderie after service. To the entire Commissionaires family, past and present, thank you for a century of service, loyalty, and care. Here's to the next 100 years.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
Mr. Speaker, in this short parliamentary session, we're rushing through legislation to temporarily, partially, perhaps override the very laws that have defined this Liberal government's decade-long war on development. Let's name them. C-69, the No New Pipelines Act. C-48, the tanker ban. The oil and gas production cap. The industrial carbon tax. These laws have made Canada one of the slowest growing economies in the developed world. Now, as we host the G7, our allies are still asking, why can't Canada get anything built? The government's latest response, Bill C-5, a patchwork fix that hopes to no one notices the mess underneath. Selectively overriding laws is a fake approach. Here's the real solution. Repeal these anti-energy laws, approve energy projects, create jobs, build again. Let's stop pretending and start delivering stronger paychecks and a better future for Canadians.
Great statement. The Honourable Member for Scarborough Centre, Don Valley East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I recently had the opportunity to attend the community gas sale and annual bake sale held by the Church of Our Saviour, Don Mills, in my riding of Scarborough Centre, Don Valley East. Thank you, Liz Linz and Reverend Pierre Nyongere, for inviting me and everyone who helped to organize this fantastic event. I appreciated the warm welcome. It was wonderful to meet members of the community in this relaxed setting and also to see the talents of Don Valley East on display with the amazing art, homemade soups, donuts, and other baked goods. Whatever our faith, we all want the best for our family, our community, and our country. Events like this help to build strong communities, and I look forward to getting to know this part of my riding this summer. I hope everyone has a productive and fulfilling summer.
Hear, hear.
I blanked out. I got no idea what was just said. None.
Mr. Speaker, it's never been more difficult for V8 truck owners in this country. After years of Liberal mismanagement, they've created hardships for farmers, families, and forestry workers in northern Alberta. Now this Liberal government plans to ban gas-powered vehicles and force Canadians to drive electric vehicles. Just one more example of Ottawa knows best. Well, Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what Albertans and rural Canadians know. The farmer hauling his livestock can't wait for hours to recharge during a trip. The hunter who needs to bring home his moose can't stick it in the back of a Prius. And when it's minus 40 out, oil and gas workers can't rely on EVs to haul heavy equipment needed to keep the heat on for the rest of the country. Even in Quebec, Mr. Speaker, the #1 selling vehicle is the gas-powered F-Series pickup. In a strong and free Canada, Canadians must have the choice to drive a vehicle that meets their needs at a price that they can afford. It's time to axe the ban on electric-powered vehicles. Or gas-powered vehicles.
The Honourable Member for Madawaska, Restigouche. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last month, during my very first official activity as the elected member for Madawaska-Restigouche, I had the pleasure of attending the Grandiose Communautaire Awards ceremony organized by the Regional Municipality of Grand Falls.
Individuals receive a Grandiose Award in recognition of their volunteer work. They generously give their time to organize activities and provide essential services to the community. Without these dedicated volunteers, many local initiatives simply wouldn't happen. Congratulations to Mariette Lafrance, Judith Thériault, and José Roussel. Your contributions are both valuable and essential.
3 other individuals were honored in the Ambassador category. This award recognizes individuals whose outstanding achievements have brought the Regional Municipality of Grand Falls to prominence at the provincial, national, or international level. Congratulations to Alain Lavoie, Morel Cassi, and Coco Caral-Belliveau. You're a true source of pride for our region. And as
Madawaska-Restigouche is full of talent, and it's a big privilege to represent this beautiful riding.
The honourable member for Calgary Signal Hill.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government will soon ban the sale of gas and diesel-powered vehicles in our country. They want to force Canadians to buy electric vehicles. It doesn't matter that the Liberal plan will add $20,000 to the cost of a vehicle. It doesn't matter that Canada is one of the largest and coldest nations in the world. It doesn't matter that working Canadians rely on dependable vehicles to earn a living and provide for their families. It doesn't matter that we don't have the electrical generation or transmission capacity for their idea. And it doesn't matter that EV sales in Canada are on the decline, and both General Motors and Ford have called for scrapping the ban. Canadians demand the Prime Minister support farmers, tradespeople, energy field workers, and their families who require reliable transportation and must be allowed to choose their vehicle. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
the Honourable Member for Argenteuil-La-Petite-Nation. Mr. Speaker, it is a great honour to recognize the outstanding contribution of a local artist and watercolorist, Jean-Yves Guindon of Saint-André-Avalin, in my riding of Argenteuil-La-Petite-Nation. With more than 40 years of a career painting over 5,000 paintings, Mr. Guindon is an iconic figure in Quebec art. With his unique perspective, he has captured the beauty of our landscapes, the soul of the built heritage, and the architecture of our region with remarkable precision and sensitivity. He has exhibited throughout Quebec, Canada, Europe, Toronto, and Brussels, but his inspiration remains deeply rooted in our territory. Beyond his artistic career, Mr. Guindon is also an example of commitment to some 30 organizations, foundations, and corporations in the region.
I want to encourage everyone who hasn't yet already, hit that like button.
I am proud to present him with the King Charles III Medal in recognition of his work, his invaluable contribution to Canadian culture, and his community involvement. Thank you.
Oral questions.
Oral questions. Honorable representative of the Conservative Party.
Speaker, what if I told you that the government had a plan to increase the cost of vehicles by over $20,000 and kill 40,000 high-paying Canadian jobs? Well, that's exactly what these Liberals are doing with their mandate to eliminate the gas-powered vehicles starting to take effect next year. Workers and families across Canada, especially in rural and northern communities, can't afford this dangerous Liberal experiment. It's simple, Mr. Speaker. Canadians don't want this shoved down their throat. Tonight, will the Liberals vote to immediately end their radical ban on gas-powered vehicles immediately?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, leave it to the Conservatives to hit one of the most major industries that we have in our country exactly at the same time as it's getting hit by unjustified tariffs from the United States. We stand with our auto workers. We've been investing in our auto industry, and we will keep making sure that we have strong union jobs in our autos.
The Honourable Member for Grand Prairie.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's completely ridiculous because a report out today projects 50,000 job losses in the auto sector because of trade uncertainty. But rather than providing the auto sector with any kind of certainty, these Liberals are doubling down on their risky and dangerous EV mandate. Ford and GM are pleading with the government to end the insanity. Industry projects that the Liberal ban on the gas-powered engine will cost an additional 40,000 high-paying Canadian jobs. The combination of the Liberals' inability to get a deal on tariffs and their self-imposed radical EV mandate will destroy Canada's auto sector. So will the Liberals join us today and call
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons
We take no lessons from the Conservatives. Through the applause. We will force people to drive electric vehicles.
The auto sector, Mr. Speaker. Even Bloomberg ranked Canada first in the world for the EV supply chain, Mr. Speaker. We should all be celebrating. We're going to fight for the industry. We're going to fight for our workers. We're going to fight for Canada strong, Mr. Speaker.
We believe in EVs except for Elon Musk.
Canadians' freedom of choice. Choice to drive the vehicle that suits their needs. Choice to drive the vehicle that they need for their family. That's what this side of the House will stand for. We're talking.
Excuse me, honourable member. I missed. If the member could, I couldn't hear anything. If the member could back up just a little bit, the member could start over. Could you start over? Could the member start over? More or less, wherever you want to start from.
Take control of the House, you cottonhead. Come on.
I couldn't hear. I'm sorry.
What is this?
I'm sorry. You gotta bring the House under control.
The honourable member has the floor. Would you like to ask a question?
I appreciate that. Mr. Speaker, these Liberals over here do not believe in the freedom of choice that Canadians should have when it comes to the vehicle that they drive. Right now, they have a mandate in place that makes it so that Canadians will have to buy EVs. They will have to. But that does not fit the needs of Canadian families. And especially at this time when Canadian families are struggling to make ends meet, they cannot afford the additional $20,000 that this mandate will add to their bill when they go to purchase a new car. Right now, this government has an option, and that is to vote with Conservatives to relinquish their ban on gas-powered vehicles. Will they?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, what I will do is stand up for our auto workers all across our country. Stand up for a strong auto industry. I will stand up to make sure that we're climate competitive and going where the world is moving, which if they actually looked at studies, globally, EV sales are up. So if the members opposite actually care about making sure that we are standing up for our auto workers, I hope that they will stand up with us to make sure that we are protecting the industry.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Lethbridge.
If you're going to stand up for auto workers, if the Liberal government is truly going to stand with auto workers, then stop making the very vehicles that they're producing illegal.
Yay! And bring down the cost of gasoline.
In my community of Lethbridge, a farmer cannot drive an EV to go pick up seed or drive an EV to go harvest their crop.
10 seconds.
Families in my community need choice when it comes to the vehicle that they will drive. Will the Liberals stand with Canadians and relinquish their ban on gas-powered cars?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, maybe just as a point of clarification about the regulation that they're talking about, which is not as they describe, let us be clear that there is no ban on gas-powered vehicles. They can read the regulation. So if we want to be clear, what we are doing is making sure that EVs are available to Canadians. 546,000 Canadians accessed our rebate to be able to purchase the vehicles because they wanted them.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker,
Canadians don't realize it yet, but very soon, because of this Liberal government, the cost of gas-powered vehicles is going to go up by $20,000 because this government wants to force everyone to buy electric. Banning gas-powered vehicles in Quebec, Mr. Speaker, that means no more snowmobiles, no more ATVs, no more F-150s, and vehicles will cost more and more. Will this Liberal Prime Minister, whose motorcade probably burns more gas than all the ATVs in the Eastern Townships put together, give Canadians the freedom to choose and vote in favor of our motion to cancel the ban on gas-powered vehicles? The Honourable Finance Minister. Mr. Speaker, my colleague should be delighted that thanks to our government, we have brought Quebec into the auto industry. We've made record investments in the sector. And the member will see what that looks like. We're building the industry of the future in Quebec and Ontario and all across the country. We've always fought for communities, whether it's Brampton, Oshawa, or in Quebec. We are building a strong Canada. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, this is a cold country. It's a northern country. It gets cold in Quebec. According to the CAA, cold weather cuts a car's battery's lifespan by 40%. Banning gas-powered vehicles in Canada is unrealistic and will cost Canadians at least 38,000 jobs. This government wants to punish Quebecers who choose a gas-powered vehicle by imposing a tax of $20,000 per vehicle. Why do the Liberals want to punish Quebecers in rural areas? Will they vote in favor of our motion tonight and cancel the ban on gas-powered vehicles and leave Quebecers the freedom to choose what kind of vehicle they want?
Well, it should be all Canadians the freedom to choose what vehicle they want.
Perhaps we shouldn't be surprised that the Conservatives are going to say that this is not a strong industry when it's such an important industry in our country. So we will always stand with workers in the auto industry. And in Quebec, it should be known that about 25% of the new vehicles sold in Quebec are electric. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is using the distraction of the G7 to ram through Bill C-5 without debate, a power grab against Quebec and Indigenous people. But fortunately, some of us are on the lookout. Yesterday, the AFN threatened to take court action if C-5s passed without adequate consultation with Indigenous peoples. Also yesterday, a former Liberal minister voted against his own caucus, saying the Liberals' approach would even embarrass Stephen Harper. Will the Liberals take the time to answer questions on C-5 instead of forcing it down Parliament's throat?
The Honourable Minister of Nordic and Arctic Affairs.
Monsieur Président, le gouvernement fédéral.
Mr. Speaker, the federal government will determine whether a major project is in the national interest after consulting the provinces, territories, and Indigenous peoples. The projects will be chosen and will be subject to exhaustive consultation with Indigenous people. For all projects, the Crown, including the provinces and the territories, have to consult First Nations, and that's what this government will do. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the member for Beaches East York is surely not the only Liberal uncomfortable with C-5. There are others who didn't get into politics to force pipelines on Quebec without its consent and without a credible environmental assessment. There are others who didn't get into politics to undo reconciliation by forcing energy projects on Indigenous peoples. There are still other Liberals who didn't get into politics to copy Pierre Poilievre's ideas and use closure to ram them through with help from the Conservatives. Will these Liberals ask the Prime Minister to let Parliament do its work instead of imposing C-5? The Honourable Government House Leader. Parliament is doing its job, Mr. Speaker.
Why does he always stand like that, like a
government that was
dork?
elected on the slogan of "It's time to build" in Canada. We're doing that with respect. We, of course, are speeding projects up, those of national importance, while at the same time respecting jurisdictions and Indigenous rights. But we're doing that, Mr. Speaker, because Canada has to take charge to create opportunities to build a strong economy. It is time to build, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, Bill C-5 does more than circumvent environmental assessments. It allows oil companies to violate 13 laws and 7 regulations, most of them environmental. With C5, there will no longer be any need to comply with the Environmental Protection Act, the Species at Risk Act, the Fisheries Act, the Marine Mammal Regulations, and many more. What's worse, Section 21 specifies that Ottawa can suspend any other law by order in council. Just like Donald Trump. Is there even one law that the Liberals are not prepared to violate on behalf of the oil companies? The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Mr. Speaker, Canadians and Quebecers asked us to build a strong economy. They called on us to embark on projects of national importance. That's what we're doing, but we're doing it while at the same time protecting the environment. And I hope that the Bloc will consider supporting us on this bill.
A member for Oxford.
Mr. Speaker, Oxford is home to thousands of hard-working auto workers and spin-off jobs that fuel our economy. A new report warns that the unjustified U.S. tariffs on the auto sector could kill 50,000 jobs. Yeah. Our families are worried, our workers are terrified, and the layoffs have already started. But this Prime Minister claimed to be the man with a plan. But as we don't get a deal done, we are suffering right across the board. The Prime Minister talks a big game, but when it comes to fighting for auto workers, he is missing from action. Can the Liberals tell us how many auto sector jobs will be lost because they failed to get a deal?
Honorable Ministre des Finances.
Mr. Speaker, it's incumbent on every member in the South to fight for auto sector, Mr. Speaker. We know that they are the best worker in the world. We know that they are in our communities across the country.
Goodness.
We know that we have been working with them hand in hand at every time, Mr. Speaker. We're facing a trade war from our closest neighbor, Mr. Speaker, but one thing is true. We're going to fight for our workers. We're going to fight for our industry. We're going to fight for Canada. Mr. Speaker, we're the true North, strong and free, and we'll fight for our workers.
The honourable member for Niagara Falls, Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Speaker, in May, GM announced a record-setting $888 million investment in one of our local V8 engine plants. Problem is, they're investing it in Tonawanda, New York, just miles away from our very own V8 engine plant in St. Catharines. Workers in Niagara are worried about their future, and now a new report says that the unjustified U.S. tariffs could kill over 50,000 auto sector jobs in Canada.
That's a lot of
Well,
jobs.
the Liberals admit their failure to get a deal with the U.S. threatens to kill thousands of good-paying auto sector jobs in southern Ontario.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're in this trade war against these unjust and illegal tariffs. That's what we're fighting every day. That's what the Prime Minister is taking on in Kananaskis. And we are fighting for the workers and their investors.
How is he taking it on in Kananaskis? Trump left.
We just remembered Buzz
Who's he talking
Hargrove
about
in this
tariffs
House
with?
and what he would be fighting for. Let's fight together for those things that will keep us together, strong, fighting for those investments, fighting for those workers. I invite the members opposite to join us in that fight.
Liberals really are stupid, aren't they?
For Windsor, Tecumseh, Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, a new report says that the U.S. tariffs on Canada's auto sector could kill 50,000 jobs. The Prime Minister promised elbows up with the U.S., but it's been elbows down. He said he was the man with the plan, but he's been unable to get a deal, directly threatening the jobs of Canadian auto workers. We need real solutions for Canadians. Can the Liberal government tell us how many jobs will be lost in the auto sector because of their failure to get a deal?
The Honourable Minister of Transport and Internal Trade.
Mr. Speaker,
Oh,
our
my
government
goodness.
will always stand up for our auto
Did she lost
sector.
weight?
We will always stand up for our auto workers.
That's right.
That is what we were elected to do, to stand for Canada, to fight for Canada. That is what the Prime Minister is doing this week in Kananaskis. And I do know that Canadians recognize, and I hope all members of this House will recognize, you can't get a good deal for Canada if you negotiate in public.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Member for Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, in Windsor, we build cars. It's what feeds our families and pays our mortgages.
prices. But now, 50,000 Canadian auto jobs are at risk because this Prime Minister couldn't get a deal with the United States. He promised to be elbows up, but instead, it's elbows down. In Windsor, auto workers and suppliers are very concerned, and they deserve answers. And if Buzz was here today, he'd be asking how many jobs will be lost because this Liberal government failed to stand up for Windsor and the Canadian auto sector, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Transport and Internal Trade.
Mr. Speaker, this is a frightening time for our auto workers. It's a frightening time for all Canadians. And that is why it is so important for Canadians to hear all of us say that our government was elected to stand for Canada, our government was elected to fight for Canada, and that, Mr. Speaker, is what we shall surely do. It is what we are doing. And I know, Mr. Speaker, Canadians are smart. They know you can't get a good deal if you negotiate in public.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, after 10 years of Liberal government, Canadians are facing a cost of living crisis, and now Liberals are proposing to ban all gas-powered vehicles, including pickup trucks and SUVs, in just 10 years, a policy that will cost 38,000 Canadian jobs and drive up the price of new vehicles by $20,000 each. Conservatives believe that Canadians who drive their kids to school or to sports or themselves to work should have the freedom to choose the vehicle that's right for them and their families at a price that they can afford. Why does this Liberal government apparently disagree?
Oh, great question. The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, once again, it is so shocking in a moment when our auto industry is under fire from the unjustified tariff from the United States that we have the Conservatives talking down a growing industry right in our country. We are going to stand up for our auto workers. We're going to support our auto workers, and we're going to make sure that Canadians have access to a growing area for vehicles. It's actually growing globally. We're going to make sure that Canadians have access to zero-emission vehicles.
The Honourable Member for Brandon Souris.
The Liberal government is banning gas-powered vehicles and forcing Canadians to buy electric. This will add $20,000 on top of the average $66,000 price of buying a car, as if they need to be more expensive in this country. This will jack up prices on Canadians and gut hundreds of energy sector jobs in Western Manitoba. Canadians do not want to be forced to drive EVs. With manufacturers like GM and Ford calling for its removal, will the Liberals admit their mistake and vote in favour of our Conservative motion to give Canadians back choice in what they drive later today?
Mr. Speaker, what we are prepared to admit is that we landed generational investment in this country, Mr. Speaker. You have seen companies of the like of Volkswagen choosing Canada, Mr. Speaker. You have seen companies like Honda choosing Canada, Mr. Speaker. You have seen companies like Stellantis choosing Canada, Mr. Speaker. And the reason why? Because we have the best worker in the world, Mr. Speaker. Because we have a growing industry. Because they know that Canada is the land of the future, Mr. Speaker. They should rally with us, cheer our workers, cheer our industry, and let's cheer Canada together.
The Honourable Member for Montmorency-Charlevoix.
Man, that guy's so annoying.
In my riding, we need our vehicles. We need them to take kids to school, to work on our farms, or even to explore our vast territory. We need our ATVs and our skidoos. Gas is not the only means, but it's efficient and effective, and it works everywhere. Instead of allowing us to take charge and develop and grow our economy, will the Prime Minister scrap this bill to ban gas-powered vehicles and allow Canadians free choice? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Mr. Speaker, to start with, we're not banning skidoos. We need to talk about the facts here. In Quebec, there are already regulations enacted by the provincial government of Quebec to ensure that Quebecers have access to zero emissions vehicles. So if he wants to talk about that, he should look at the regulations in his own province first, because Quebecers are buying 25% of new vehicle purchases in Quebec are EVs. The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said he would never force energy projects on Quebec or any province without its consent. Unfortunately, C5 says the opposite. It allows Ottawa to decide everything all by itself by order in council, and then hold bogus consultations once a project has already been approved. The Bloc thought this must be a mistake, so we're proposing an amendment that's consistent with what the Prime Minister said. It would require him to get the approval of Quebec and the provinces before going ahead. Will the Prime Minister support that? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, the bill in question does respect provincial jurisdiction, it does respect Aboriginal rights, and it supports the regulatory processes that are already in place, but it seeks to accelerate the approval of projects in the national interest that will create opportunities, create jobs, create infrastructure all across the country. And if you don't believe me, Mr. Speaker, go ask François Legault or the Quebec government. They support this bill. The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. C5 would allow Ottawa to force pipelines on Quebec, the provinces, and First Nations without their consent. It allows 13 laws to be violated and others to be added by order in council. C5 establishes criteria for projects of national interest, all of which can also be bypassed. It's no joke. C5 even allows the minister to bypass C5. That's why the Bloc's proposing amendments. Without our amendments, C5 is nothing more than a license to run roughshod over Quebecers. Will the Liberals support us? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, not only does the Quebec government support this bill, Quebecers support this bill. We just saw there was an election where 44 Liberals were elected all across Quebec. Why? Because Quebecers know. Quebecers are broad-minded, and they can see that we need to build. We need major projects. We need to create good opportunities for our kids and our grandkids. It allows for dreams,
through Quebec,
and it allows to build Quebec, Mr. Speaker.
You got to steamroll through Quebec and just build.
After telling Canadians to live in shipping containers, will the housing minister go home to his $2 million penthouse in Vancouver, his 11 acres in Tofino, or his $5.6 million property in Squamish? This hypocritical minister is telling young Canadians stuck in their parents' basement that housing prices don't need to come down. Does he not see how arrogant and condescending that sounds from atop his Vancouver penthouse?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I honestly don't know where honourable colleagues across the aisle are going with this questioning. The minister is obviously in full compliance with the strictest ethics code known of in the Western world. It applies to all of us. It applies to that minister. He will be in full compliance with that.
The Honourable Member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, I would encourage the minister to come down from his penthouse and answer the questions himself rather than relying on the House Leader. He has a $10 million real estate portfolio that includes multiple properties and a beautiful Vancouver penthouse. I'm sure it's very nice. No wonder then that his first act as housing minister was to announce that he doesn't want housing prices to go down. No wonder. Why is this minister putting his personal portfolio ahead of his cabinet portfolio and abandoning young people who are stuck without jobs and still living with their parents?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
He's always pretty cheeky, eh?
Mr. Speaker, it must be getting late into the month because the level of innuendo coming from the other side of this House is quite frankly appalling. Obviously, this minister is in compliance with all of the disclosure obligations and is going to continue complying with the strictest ethics code in the world. And he'll, at the same time, he will obviously be creating many hundreds of thousands of housing opportunities for young Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, I do want to be generous today and offer the Housing Minister one more opportunity to respond. The issue here is that the Minister, who's supposed to be solving the Liberal housing crisis, actually has a personal financial interest in seeing that crisis continue. I think to most Canadians that would seem to be a little bit of a problem. How can we expect the Penthouse Minister to actually solve the Liberal housing crisis while the same housing crisis continues to make him even richer?
That's true. That's a very good point.
Let me take one more opportunity to denounce this juvenile, amateurish invective coming from the other side of the House that impugns the motives of upstanding people who present themselves for public office, who work tirelessly to create opportunities for Canadians. This minister has a large mandate. He will create hundreds of thousands of housing units for Canadians. He will continue that work, and of course he will comply with all the rules, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Bellechasse, Les Etchemins, Lévis. With July 1st coming up, Quebecers are concerned. Many Quebecers haven't been able to find a new home before moving day because it's too expensive. But the minister has said that housing prices don't need to go down. Well, Mr. Speaker, obviously, he's got a huge real estate portfolio, so it's obviously in his interest to keep prices high. But because he's refusing to answer the question, he's creating a culture of mistrust. Why is the Prime Minister allowing a millionaire real estate holder decide what Quebecers what access Quebecers will have to housing?
That's a good point.
Mr. Speaker, the member across the way was a minister in a government. She knows better than this. I'm surprised to hear such low rhetoric in this House, which impugns the motivations of ministers who are working very hard. A minister who's working hard to create housing opportunities for Quebecers. We are working tirelessly. This minister is working tirelessly with Quebec to create housing opportunities, and he will comply with all ethics rules, and this member knows better. The honourable member for Bellechasse, Les Etchemins, Lévis. Well, I'll tell you what's scandalous, Mr. Speaker. It's that there's a minister who is letting young Quebecers go back to live in their parents' basements because they don't have any money to pay for housing. That's what's scandalous here, Mr. Speaker. Stand up and say how you are going to fix the housing crisis. Speak not as a millionaire, but as a member of this House.
Yeah, wow.
The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, we are getting close to the end of this parliamentary session. It's been intense. I know that we had an election not too long ago, but honestly, this is dishonourable for this member to speak this way to a member who has run for public office to do good for his community, to do good work for his country. He is working hand in hand with the government of Quebec to create programs and opportunities for housing for young Quebecers, and he'll continue to do that while respecting all ethics codes. This member knows better, and honestly, these questions dishonor her.
Member for Brampton South.
Mr. Speaker, public safety is a key priority in my community of Brampton South. Could the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada share with my community and Canadians what is the government's plan to toughen the criminal code to make our communities safer for everyone? Great question.
Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for her question and for her work advancing important criminal reforms to keep communities safe. In the recent federal election, we were elected on a mandate to help give law enforcement the tools they need to keep communities safe and to strengthen the criminal code. Specifically, we will be advancing legislative reforms to strengthen the bail system when it comes to violent crimes involving home invasion, drug trafficking, and auto theft, and stiffer penalties for organized crime and violent crime. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to working with my colleague representing the good people of Brampton South and members of Parliament from every community in this country to help keep Canadians safe.
The honourable member for Mission Matsqui Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, extortion is up 357%. Take, for example, the Lehmans in Mission. Last year, they lost $300,000 to this heinous crime. While their lives were completely destabilized, the criminal never served a day in jail, got 9 months house arrest and probation. The Liberals rejected our common sense extortion bill in the last Parliament that would reinstate mandatory minimums. Why won't they stand with Canadians and reverse their disastrous policies?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, when dangerous people commit violent crimes, it's important that they face serious criminal penalties. Mr. Speaker, I would point out to the honourable member that extortion is illegal in this country and its perpetrators must be apprehended and punished in accordance with the criminal code. When he looks at mandatory minimum penalties, he'll see that repeat violent offences involving firearms have a mandatory minimum penalty of 7 years and a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. The criminal code is a serious document. It will treat serious criminals very seriously, and I look forward to working with members of the Conservative Party to give law enforcement the tools they need, not only to punish criminals, but to prevent crime in the first place.
The honourable member for Mission Matsqui Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, extortion is obviously illegal, but it was this minister and the Liberal government that removed mandatory sentences for these dangerous crimes. The sad reality is that the Lehmans will probably never get their money back. And not only were they traumatized by this crime, they were forced to remove the $300,000 from their business account. And now that money is subject to tax with the CRA. When will the Liberals get serious and change the laws that protect Canadians and put the Lehmans first, not the criminal?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, it is beyond reprehensible for a member of the House of Commons to suggest that one party or another puts criminals ahead of victims. We are going to advance important reforms to strengthen sentencing. We are going to take extortion seriously to ensure that people who suffer the consequences of these crimes see recourse to the criminal justice system. But importantly, Mr. Speaker, it can't only be about stiffening penalties. It also needs to be about investing in frontline officers who can help keep communities safe to prevent crime in the first place. As we advance these important reforms, I hope we can, for once, gain the support of the Conservative Party to help keep communities safe.
Buddy, the Conservatives have been trying to keep communities safe.
Mr. Speaker, incidents of extortion are increasing at a rampant speed, and the Liberal government doesn't seem to be serious about it. In Edmonton, firebombs are being thrown at businesses, and bullets are being fired at houses demanding for extortion money. Extortion is up by 357%. Liberals voted down the common sense Bill C-381, enforcing a 3-year mandatory minimum penalty and a 4-year penalty for extortion involving non-restricted firearms, which was repealed by the Liberals in Bill C-5. Will the Liberals finally adopt the Conservative plan to crack down on violent extortion?
Yeah.
Don't say it. Don't say it. Play nice.
Mr. Speaker, we will hold extortionists accountable. Just yesterday, I was at a big announcement with Peel Regional Police where 18 extortionists were caught involved in a criminal organization. This is a big accomplishment. And we are striking them where it counts. Criminals will be investigated, they will be charged, they will be sentenced. Mr. Speaker, extortion carries a maximum sentence of life in prison, a minimum sentence when done with a firearm of 5 years, and with
The honourable member for Fundy Royal.
Mr. Speaker, what the minister failed to mention is thanks to 10 years of Liberal inaction on crime, half of those individuals, half of those 18, were out on bail when they were arrested. And thanks to the good work of the Peel Regional Police, half of them were charged for violent crimes like arson and extortion. Incredibly, Mr. Speaker, half of those individuals are already out on the street today. It used to be in Canada that if you were charged with extortion, fraud, drive-by shootings or arson, then you would go to jail. But thanks to the Liberals' soft on crime bill C-5 and easy bail laws, these criminals are free.
The Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, I will agree with with the member that yesterday was a big day. Project Outsource was a big win for Canada. It was a big win for Peel Region. And I want to thank the officers of Peel Regional Police, Halton, York, the RCMP, everyone that was involved in this investigation. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to bail, the law says that people who are a risk to public safety or a flight should not be given bail. Mr. Speaker, it is important that the provinces who administer justice also make sure that the criminal courts under the provincial jurisdiction function as they should.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, Canada is facing a wave of extortion in restaurants and bars, and Montreal and Laval are being affected. Over the last year, there have been fires and attacks with firearms. There are people who are committing crimes from prison using their cell phones right now. Will the Minister of Public Safety ask his colleague, the Minister of Justice, to change the laws to bring justice back to Canada?
Minister of Justice. Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague raises extortion with a firearm. When repeat violent criminals commit offences of this nature, they face a mandatory minimum of 7 years and a maximum of life imprisonment. Mr. Speaker, when we see this kind of behaviour, we need not only to reform criminal laws to punish wrongdoers on the back end of such conduct, but we need to invest in our frontline officers who are keeping communities safe. As part of the recent election campaign, Canadians have elected a new Liberal government to make these precise investments, and I look forward to implementing them. I hope only Conservative members will join us.
The Honourable Member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
Mr. Speaker, a so-called safe injection site backed by this Liberal government became the scene of a broad daylight drug shootout. A mother walking by was killed, yet the staff member at the site who helped the shooters escape, shockingly, won't serve a single day behind bars. Wow. This wasn't about harm reduction, it was chaos, violence, and death in a residential neighborhood. Will this Liberal government finally accept responsibility for these sites becoming crime magnets and ending the dangerous policies putting Canadians at risk?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The drug crisis across Canada and North America has impacted many communities, and there isn't a community that we represent that hasn't gone through challenges. With respect to the matter in question, Mr. Speaker, it is something that was made by an independent adjudicator, and I won't be able to comment on that.
The Honourable Member for Brantford's Brant South, Six Nations.
After a decade of this Liberal government, serious violent crime has soared, but so has leniency. A mother is dead, and the so-called harm reduction worker who helped the accused killer gets to serve her sentence from home and to enjoy her gym membership. What kind of justice system does the Prime Minister believe in? One that protects victims or one that rewards criminals? And to correct what the Prime Minister had to say, there is no mandatory minimum for extortion because she and her government voted in favor of C5. Right. Will the Liberals finally take responsibility for their soft on crime agenda?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, this new government was given a strong mandate from Canadians to keep our communities safe, and we will do exactly that. We're committed to hiring 1,000 new CBSA officers, 1,000 more RCMP personnel to secure our borders, to keep our streets safe. We'll make it tougher for violent criminals to get bail and impose stricter sentences for repeat violent offenders. Mr. Speaker, this government is acting quickly. We brought in C2 immediately to provide policing with the tools necessary to catch.
The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, extortion is up 357% across Canada. In the GTA, 18 suspects were arrested in a major extortion bust. Firearms, ammunition, and $4.2 million seized in assets. And get this, half of the suspects were already released on bail. Just last week, York Region Police Chief called for urgent bail reform. The Liberals voted against a Conservative bill to crack down on extortion and reintroduce mandatory minimums. Will the Prime Minister stop siding with criminals and support our plan to keep violent criminals in jail?
Great question.
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, once again, yesterday was a good day. Project Outsource was a big bust, and it's why our government is committed to introducing new legislation that will toughen bail rules for serious offences and ensure that sentences match the severity of crimes. Mr. Speaker, we're working hard to make sure law enforcement has the tools it needs to investigate, to catch, to prosecute, and to put criminals behind bars.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for York Centre.
Speaker, after a decade of this Liberal government, crime in Toronto is out of control. Last night in North York, what began as an armed carjacking at the shops of Don Mills turned into a police pursuit and a man jumping off the Gardiner Expressway. The Liberals turned Toronto into Grand Theft Auto real-life edition. Liberal Bill C5 and C75 let criminals out on bail instead of locking them up and keeping us safe. So I ask, Speaker, when will the Liberals repeal their soft on bail regime and start protecting Canadians from violent criminals?
Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, this new government is committed to working collaboratively with the provinces to ensure that our bail system works. Mr. Speaker, bail is administered by the provinces through provincial judges in provincial courts and by Crown provincial prosecutors. Mr. Speaker, they too should be given the resources and the tools that are needed, and they should have the space that is necessary to hold these criminals accountable.
The Honourable Member for Mont Saint Bruno.
That's not even a serious statement. Liberals don't care.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the main reasons why I got into politics is because I love meeting with people, no matter where they come from or what their story is. The great diversity of Quebec and in my riding of Mont Saint Bruno l'Acadie reminds me every day that our differences make Canada stronger. I'm looking forward to participating in community life in my riding this summer. Can the Minister of Identity and Canadian Culture and the Minister responsible for official languages please tell us what major national events will take place this summer and how these events will bring Canadians together? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague from Mont Saint Bruno Acadie for his work with his community. Thanks to the Celebrate Canada program, our government is supporting over 1,500 events around the country to mark, among other things, National Indigenous Peoples Day, La Saint-Jean-Baptiste, Multiculturalism Day, Canada Day, and the national holiday of Acadie. Concerts, cultural festivals, community gatherings, so many opportunities to celebrate our diversity and to strengthen that which unites us from coast to coast to coast.
Member for Middlesex.
Mr. Speaker, a new report confirms what Canadians already knew. The Liberal housing crisis isn't just locking generations out of home ownership, it's dragging down our whole economy. Teachers are commuting hours just to afford rent. Tradespeople are building homes that they are priced out of owning. And permitting in London is taking over 6 months, even just for a small renovation. Now the Liberals' own data shows collapsing housing starts, 72% in London. Ooh. So after nearly a decade in power, how does this government defend doubling housing costs and tanking our economy?
The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Let's see you get out of this one, boy.
Let's go.
Canadians elected this new government to double construction. That's right.
And
to make it more affordable across the country, and that's what we're going to deliver.
That's right.
We're focused on delivering tax breaks on GST and income tax. We're focused on lowering development costs. We're focused on delivering for Canadians on affordability across housing, and we expect the members opposite to support that.
The Honourable Member for Middlesex, London.
Canadians can't live in press releases and recycled talking points. They need homes. London received $74 million from the Liberals' Housing Accelerator Fund. And what did we get? A staggering 72% drop in housing starts and zero transparency. Meanwhile, this government is under fire for funneling public dollars to insiders and mismanaging every major project. So when will the Liberals admit their signature housing plan is a flop and stop using taxpayer money to cover up their failure with photo ops?
The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The good news is that housing starts across Canada are up this year.
That's right. Good work.
seeing challenges in Ontario. We're working with our partners in Ontario to turn that around. But across Canada, we're building, and we're going to build more.
For Richmond Centre, Marpole.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' housing agents May report confirms that housing starts in Vancouver dropped 10.4% from last year, despite the city receiving $115 million from the Housing Accelerator Fund. In Richmond, housing projects are stalled, and families are facing record-high prices. When will this Liberal government admit its housing plan is failing and that Canadians are paying the cost for their incompetence?
The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians made a very clear choice in April to elect a government that's focused on delivering housing. And we will do that, Mr. Speaker. And the Housing Accelerator Fund has been extraordinarily well supported by over 200 communities across Canada.
That's right.
So if the members opposite don't believe in the program, you can talk to your mayors and councillors, continue to throw them under the bus. This government is going to work in that partnership, and we're going to deliver housing with communities across Canada.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby Central.
Mr. Speaker, today leaders from around the world are meeting at the G7 summit in Alberta to tackle some of the most complex challenges. I understand that the Prime Minister met with President Zelensky today to understand what Ukraine needs to secure its victory. Can the Minister of National Defence please update this House on the discussion Canada is having regarding Ukraine at the G7 today?
Good question. The Honourable Minister of Defence, of National Defence.
I'd like to thank the member for Burnaby Central for his dedication. Canada's support for Ukraine in the face of Russia's illegal and unjustified war remains steadfast. Earlier today at the G7 summit, the Prime Minister announced $2 billion in new military support to aid Ukraine in its time of need. This includes funding for drones, for ammunition, and for armored vehicles. We're also providing over $2.3 billion to help Ukraine rebuild its infrastructure and its public systems, Mr. Speaker. Make no mistake, Canada will stand with Ukraine until victory.
The Honourable Member for Hamilton East Stony Creek.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' own May 2025 housing data is in, and it's atrocious. The Liberal Housing Accelerator Fund was put into place to accelerate housing. It's done the opposite. For example, the Housing Accelerator Fund gave $93.5 million to Hamilton, but housing starts are down by 50.7%. Why would this so-called new Liberal government continue its old, failed programs?
Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Mr. Speaker, as the member states, there are challenges in Ontario, and we're working with our partners in Ontario to turn that around. Across Canada, housing starts are up this year. Housing starts that are near record levels of almost 280,000 starts this year is the trajectory we are on. We need to build on that. We're shooting for 500,000 units, and we're going to work with our partners provincially and locally to deliver that.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Speaker, it's been 4 years since we were promised new selenium regulations to protect Canada's water and fish from devastating impacts of coal mining. Now, with the Conservatives and the Liberals in a bromance on C5, I'm wondering whether or not the minister will be bringing these protections forward. Now that they've decided to ignore workers' rights, environmental laws, and Indigenous rights, these protections and regulations are more important than ever. When will we see these long-awaited, long-promised regulations to stop foreign coal companies from destroying our beloved Rocky Mountains?
The Honourable Minister of Transport and Internal Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I'm really glad to get that question because it is so important for us to support Canada's beloved Rockies. There is a consensus among Albertans of all political stripes that we need to protect this precious resource. We need to protect our precious national parks. I want to assure the member opposite that our government will work closely with her and all members of this House to ensure that we do that. Ranchers Ranchers believe in it. Environmentalists believe in it. Hikers believe in it. Our government stands with them.
The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Not disputing the need for Canada to fortify defences and defence spending. The arbitrary 2% of our GNI for NATO stands in stark contrast to another goal long forgotten. 0.7% of GNI for development assistance. Poverty and failed states fuel terrorism and warlords and fuel wars. Now that we're investing in the war machine, will this government commit to up our investment to wage peace in this country?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Secretary of State for International Development.
Mr. Speaker, our new government commits to keeping our commitments to humanitarian aid, global development on the sustainable level. Despite other countries cutting back, our country, our great government of Canada, will continue to help those that are much in need, those that have been displaced, and those that need the help that they need in times of dire straits. Thank you.
For citizens across the country, Canadian Forces Day is an opportunity to recognize the sacrifices made by military personnel on our behalf.
Draw the attention of members to the presence in the gallery of 6 members of the Canadian Forces who are taking part in Canadian Armed Forces Day today. Royal Canadian Air Force Sergeant Brittany Shulga, Royal Canadian Navy Master Sailor Tyler Grayson Ferrer, Canadian Army Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Glenn Brownridge, du Bureau du Ville.
From the Office of the Deputy Chief of Staff of Defense, Sergeant Guillaume Thibault, Chief of Military Personnel, Sergeant Jean-Charles Francourt.
Krista Rose Brake.
All right, last time we paid too much attention to what was going on in the gallery, we ended up seeing something that we weren't freaking supposed to. Anyways, we're going to get away from what's going on in the House, and we're going to actually, I don't do this too often, but sometimes I do. We're going to get back into some videos, more specifically about Canadian news and incorporating what's going on with the G7 summit. But this video that we're about to take a look at is actually CBC talking about Pierre Poilievre and the leadership review that Pierre is undergoing in January of 2026. There's a lot of criticism towards Pierre right now. Some is positive criticism, some is negative criticism. Should Pierre Poilievre stay on as the Conservative leader? That is the question that needs to be asked. And all of that is going to unravel itself in January of 2026. But for the time being, let's see what CBC has to say.
Pierre Poilievre has 7 months to convince Conservatives he should stay on as party leader. As sources tell CBC News that Poilievre will face a mandatory leadership review at the party's national convention in January. In the meantime, Poilievre appears to be taking stock of his election loss. And according to reporting in the Hill Times, Poilievre is reaching out to unsuccessful Conservative candidates for feedback. And those Conservatives described it as Poilievre doing a post-mortem himself. That's the next topic for the Power Panel with Lisa Raitt, Brad Levine, Vandana Cotter, and Rob Russo. Look, Pierre Poilievre's got more than 30 days. He's got until January, so that's like 6-7 months. It's about 210 days. Lisa, what do you make of this? Fred Delory said on the show Friday that he heard it was going to be in Calgary in January, and the leadership review is not the news. That's the mandatory thing that happens after every election, but that's going to be in the Conservative heartland, sort of in the, one of the big intellectual, cultural capitals for them in Calgary, and that it's going to happen in 2026. What do you make of those developments coming out of the Conservative Party?
Sure.
Sure. It's 2 plane rides away from most small towns in the Maritimes. So it's also in Alberta, where a lot of Quebec delegates may not go. You got to be there in person to cast a secret ballot. You can vote. And as well, it's a delegated affair, which means it's not a popular vote. It means that your local electoral district association board, which is probably still held very much by the candidate that just ran and maybe won or lost in the last election, they're going to put forward their slate to go to Calgary. Some will go, some won't go. They're all going to cast ballots. So Calgary in January is very much in favor for an incumbent. But what he's not running against anyone. He's running against a notional number as to what's good enough for him to be able to stick around. And that's the number to watch for. And calling all the failed candidates makes a whole lot of sense, because guess what? They are actually going to be voting at this event in January. So start with them.
Wow.
You know, Brad, by then also Pierre Poilievre will probably be an Alberta Member of Parliament, because the by-election will probably have happened in Battle River Crowfoot. What do you make of this, though? The way he's approaching this, kind of doing it himself, which is not surprising given Mr. Poilievre's leadership style, and the party apparatus sticking it in Calgary for the sort of favor the incumbent, as Lisa just suggested.
Yeah, there's no question that it's going to favor the incumbent for all the reasons Lisa pointed out. So that's done. Phoning through to the failed candidates. I mean, having the leader do kind of his or her own kind of post-mortem, especially when you've got this in a handful of months, probably not a bad idea. Not only because I think leaders should be talking to individuals that lost. You can talk to the winners, and they'll probably say, well, it's because I was such a great personality, and they sent me as much as they were sending a conservative or the leader. But when you talk to the failed candidate, particularly when just 4 or 5 months ago, a lot of these folks that he's talking to were expecting to win because they were 20 points ahead in the polls. Now, more won than more conservatives won this time than last time for sure. But the failed candidate. But what it does is it gives the leader the ability, when they do their own postmortem or partial postmortem, is say, that's what I heard, and they begin to be able to set the record straight as to what went wrong. So a lot of people can say you didn't pivot quick enough. You talked too much about issue X instead of issue Y, but he can say with some credibility, that's not what I heard. I did my own debrief, and this is what I heard. So he gets to help write the history as to what precisely went wrong.
Well, I mean, I could tell you, creators have been telling the truth about what went wrong with Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party. They are not taking a hard enough stance on anything, even immigration. Immigration needs to be rolled back. First of all, we have over almost 5 million people whose visas expire this year. We need to make sure that they are gone, deported, that they leave. And the Liberal government's current strategy is, we're going to use the honor system and we're just going to trust that they leave on their own. Well, we know that that's probably not going to happen for the majority of them. So we need immediate action to be taken there. But also, most Canadians, not conservative Canadians, most Canadians see that we are flooded with immigration. Pierre Poilievre's response to immigration is, there's a lot of immigration and we need to do something about it. Well, what, Pierre? What about it? How about we just leave immigration at no more than 50,000 people or 100,000 people at most per year? Keep it relatively low. And then start from there. But no hard stance on it. It's pussyfooting. It's pussyfooting. So that's not the only stance. I mean, even the gender thing. How many genders are there? Well, when he replied, again, it was just like weird. Well, I only know of 2 genders. Can you tell me how many more there are? Like, how about just come out and say there's 2, bro? Male and female. That's it. Like, why not take an actual hard stance? This is positive criticism, by the way. This isn't me ragging on Pierre. This is me actually trying to give good advice that is going to, in my opinion, gain him more support by taking a strong stance on something. The Conservatives, historically, are a little bit more weak-spined. Liberals are crooks. We know that, but they have at least a strong stance on certain things. Conservatives don't. Conservatives go where the popularity is. They try to reverse engineer it, and it's not working. Take a hard stance on something and go from there. That would be number one.
As opposed to just handing it off to party apparatus who go off and talk to various aspects of the party. They write the report, and who knows, it could be quite critical, either the leader or the leader's office or key strategic advisors to the leader. But if he does his own, he has a credible way to say, that's not what I heard.
Vaughan, do you think that would be credible? Because some of the grumblings you hear from Conservative current MPs and some of the candidates was how centrally controlled everything was, how tightly controlled everything was through the leader. And you know, if your value proposition has been in the aftermath of losing your seat and losing the election that we were this close, if the polls in January suggest you're that far away now, that becomes problematic potentially. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think also, like, you know, I agree with Brad's point, but I also think the other counter to that is that some people may not want to tell the leader everything, especially because it was so tightly controlled, because it was so central. If, you know, we heard reports of people wanting to run and their nomination was fixed or there's a preferred candidate or whatnot. So if you tell him exactly how you feel, maybe you don't get to run again. Maybe you don't get, you know, he gets offended. Maybe as much as I would hope he wants to hear it himself, sometimes people won't share exactly what they want to share with him because they may feel that it's tightly controlled and that will ruin my chances to run again. So I don't know if it's always the best way. I think it's important for party apparatus. Now, the only thing I think about is that if Jenny Byrne is still there and maybe there's not a trust for other people, I think you should have other people asking these questions too and put together a report. I think it's good political hygiene in general, whether you win or lose, to do a postmortem. But I do think himself doing it, as much as I think it's good to like connect with people, if you're trying to showcase that, yes.
Yeah, there needs to be a change. I mean, Pierre Poilievre has tanked to 30% likability, and Carney has skyrocketed to 70%. Again, I like Pierre. I voted for Pierre. I've endorsed Pierre. I've given Pierre hundreds of millions of views of exposure that are very pro-Pierre. I like Pierre. Pierre was excellent up against Justin Trudeau. There's a right time to be doing something, and there's a wrong time to be doing something. You could have the solution to the world's best problems, or the most intense problems. You could have the cure for cancer in the 40s. But if you have the best idea at the worst time, then it doesn't actually do anything. And Pierre Poilievre going up against Trudeau was monumental. It was poetic. David and Goliath. It was the battle of the titans, good versus evil, international villain versus international superhero. It was incredible. But we're not living in that era anymore. We're not living in that timeline anymore. We've evolved. Can Pierre Poilievre really go up against Carney the way we want him to? The polls say one thing. The likability says one thing. And I know, Pierre doesn't have a seat. He's not there yet. Blah, 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 blah. I get it. I've heard it all. But something needs to change. The Conservatives did okay with the popular vote. More votes than ever, even though population is higher than ever. But they did not too bad. They were off on the popular vote by about 500,000 votes. Something around there. That's not too bad. But Liberals are in power. Liberals are going to keep going up in the numbers, in the polls, in the likability as we approach the next election. Can Pierre really win over the hearts of even more Canadians up against Mark Carney without it being Justin Trudeau? That's the golden question.
That was the problem. Please help me understand. But the only thing is, like, he may not get the full information of what he gets.
Yeah, Robbie, I mean, is that stakeholder outreach or is it issues management? I mean, how do you view it?
A little both. My understanding is he's not just talking to defeated candidates, he's talking to people whom he asked to run late in the game, shortly before the campaign, and who turned him down, partly out of, like, why are you coming to me now? Why didn't you come to me before? He's also probably talking to one or two people who might be considering running against him to try and gauge exactly where they might sit. And right now they're not moving in any hurry. Look, we have to realize that this is relatively uncharted territory for this iteration of the Conservative Party. They haven't had a leadership review until since Stephen Harper in 2004, because he lost that election. There was a review. There was no way they were going to turn thumbs down on the guy who brought the modern Conservative Party together, created it in essence. This is a little different. This is not Stephen Harper. For the reasons Lisa set out, there is some real, I think, dissatisfaction in Toronto, in Quebec. I would say, I would hazard to say in Atlantic Canada as well. And it is going to be harder to organize from a distance. But I don't rule out that there might be some acrimony there. He is clearly working hard to hang on to his job. This is not a guy who's going to be sitting around sipping Docktails this summer. He's going to be working hard all summer.
So, Lisa, like I'm assuming there has to be some other formal, official election post-mortem other than the leader who lost his seat doing it himself, right? I mean, for the party to, party faithful to take it seriously, that a clear-eyed examination of how you lost after being up by 20 to 25 points for a good chunk of time, that can't be something that the leader is completely central to. I mean, can it? It needs to be broader than that.
Yeah. And my memory is failing me now, but I thought that Rick Perkins and Glenn, I can't remember Glenn's last name, sorry, Glenn, out in Calgary were asked to co-chair something that had to do with looking at the election. That would be separate and apart from what the leader's currently doing right now. Right. But I think, as Rob pointed out, we are in uncharted territory. I think what the leader is doing is, quite frankly, he's just shoring up support. And I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. What is the number that he needs to hit in order for it to be enough for him to keep his leadership? Maybe he's shooting for 95%. Could very well be. But what does that number look like? I mean, Tom Mulcair, what did his number look like? What caused him, Brad, to determine what number it needed to be in order for him to stay on as leader? These are questions that I think will unfold as time goes by. But right now, the way that the cards are dealt, I think they are very much in favor of Mr. Poilievre, and that's fine. And I don't see anyone out there, Rob, trying to mount a campaign against him, to be honest. I don't think.
Well, actually, yes, there are. Even Stephen Harper's former chief of staff, Ian Brody, called for Pierre to be removed as party leader. So yes, people within the conservative realm of politics have been calling for Pierre to step down or be replaced by somebody else. But the problem is, who else replaces Pierre? Who else has the ability to go viral aside from Pierre, or more than Pierre? Who else has the brand awareness that Pierre does? Because Pierre's done a phenomenal job of growing his brand and being a very popular person. Aaron O'Toole wasn't popular. I feel like even though Stephen Harper was prime minister, I feel like Pierre is more popular than Harper. Am I even allowed to say, like, Pierre has done a phenomenal job of making himself extremely popular? But will it be enough? Will that sheer popularity continue to rise, or will it start to come crashing down? I don't know. But what we can, most of us, agree on is that something needs to change. Even if Pierre Poilievre were to stay on as conservative leader, that's fine. That's great. But something else has to change. The tactics, the advisors, the internal team, something has to change. The strategy must adapt to current situation. You still can't be coming at this the way they did like Justin Trudeau. It has to be a different approach because we're in a different era. That's all I'm saying.
I think anyone's going to overtly run against him. I think should he
come back with the Joe Clark 67 or 70%? Do you think that those campaigns would organize very, very quickly? I think they would.
After that, I think they're going to give him a shot at his own leadership race without being polluted by having other people put their hand up. I don't think people are going to put themselves forward as an alternative to him. I think they're going to let him see what he can do in terms of getting the membership. And I'd make the prediction he's going to win the leadership handily.
Yeah. And it'll be about expectations.
What's the number, Lisa? Well, yeah, look, he's going to have
you guys will determine that.
Yeah, he's going to have 2 data points. He's going to have the by-election number from Battle River, Crowfoot, and he's going to have the leadership number. But does it need to be 75%, 80%, 85%? Yeah. I mean, what's your sense, Lisa, what conservatives would expect of the?
I mean, for me, for this new riding, this stronghold, one of the strongest strongholds that the conservatives have in the country. It's literally one of the safest ridings. There's like 3 of these ridings that have almost equal safeness. Okay. So if Pierre needs to win, I forget. I think he won. I think the guy who stepped down and has given him his riding, I think he won by like almost 80% or just above 80%. So Pierre should win by that margin, if not more. What's the benchmark? It's not 60%. It's not 75%. Get more votes than the conservative MP that gave you his seat. That should be the benchmark. You want to test likability? Get more votes than a generic MP. Sorry to say, no disrespect, but this is the leader of the opposition versus a MP, right? Like, you should be getting more support. So that benchmark alone is going to dictate really where people stand on Pierre Poilievre. And there's going to be some hiccups. There's going to be some bumps in the road because that biggest ballot protest thing, right? I mean, that they put like 91 names on Pierre Poilievre's riding in Carleton. They're also, I believe, going to be doing their same little shenanigans in this Crowfoot stronghold. So it's going to be a little tricky. It's going to be a little tricky for Pierre, but hopefully he wins by, it's more than 82%. That's what the conservative MP who gave his seat. It's the 3rd safest seat in all of Canada. Damien won by 82%. Pierre needs to win by 83 or more, in my opinion.
The leader.
It's a great question, but I would expect he's going to do well above 75%. I don't see him losing his grip on the Conservative Party of Canada whatsoever. And I think the exercise that he's going through right now, listening to people, is going to be the proof in this. He's learned this before when he almost lost his seat in 2019. In 2015, he doubled down and hit every door in his community 4 times before the next election. So this is muscle memory for him. He knows what he's doing here.
I think what also...
The guy knows how to work hard. There's no question. Quickly, Vanden and Brad, quick thoughts and a number if you got it, because then I got to get to a break.
I think what benefits him, too, is that there's no leader in the waiting. You know, I mean, Liz Landsman's a very strong leader. I mean, Harper had a very strong bench. You get people like Lisa Raitt, James Moore, and other people who can run for leader. But I don't think we see that the same way. I mean, he has a very, a caucus that, seems to believe in him and support him. But there's no person that people are saying, like, oh, this would be a really good leader for the Conservative Party of Canada. So I think that benefits him ultimately in terms of how him winning his leadership race or his review.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Brad,
That is probably the strongest point to allowing Pierre Poilievre to continue running as opposition leader is you lost the election. Normally, in these situations, people only get one kick at the can. You only get one opportunity to try to prove yourself. And if you lose, you move on. But in Pierre's case, there isn't a good enough candidate to run up against him. I mean, if Canadians, the citizens or the conservative voter base in Canada had to try to vote for a conservative leader, it would still very much be in favor of Pierre Poilievre, in my opinion. I think it would be. But is that going to be enough? We're going to have to see. I think Pierre staying on as leader should be fine so long as they make the right changes internally. It should be fine, really. But we'll see.
Word to you and a number if you've got it.
Well, I always got a number, David. Look,
I figured.
In addition to the outreach, look for him to be the softer, kinder, gentler, because I think in the lead up to that January convention, But the number, like, so the incumbent advantage for Lisa's points is gonna help him, unless you really have if you hold him personally responsible for blowing it, which I don't think a lot of Conservatives do, then they're not going to get on a plane, fly all the way to Calgary just to mark a yes, I want a leadership. So indifference, they're not going to go to Calgary. It'll just be his fan group, and the people that really, really hate him are going to go, and that, I submit, that's a very, very small group. His poll numbers are softening. That first number needs to start with a 9 in order, I think, for him, particularly because his by-election number will likely start with an 8 or a 7 for sure. And you just got to show support that it's his party. Then he gets a blank check to run in the next election campaign in 3.5 years.
Yeah, I mean, those are all somewhat okay points that I kind of agree with. But again, we're just going to have to wait and see how this does play out. And now we're going to take a look here at what's going on with the Golden Dome. What's going on with F-35 deals? My light just went out. Okay, I'm going to fix that in a moment. But let's take a look now at Mélanie Joly and what she has to say about our defense budget.
We know that also when it comes to our own reality on the trade side and on the security side, we've been over-reliant on the U.S. And so therefore, we want to become closer to Europe, closer to our European partners and some key Asian partners as well. And so we are the most European of all non-European countries. That's why it was important to be here at the Paris Air Show, which is the most important forum for the aerospace sector at a time where there's so many decisions and investment made in the sector. We also announced last week, Prime Minister Carney announced $9 billion in defense investments before March 31st. $3.2 billion are also part of this $9 billion investments are for industrial procurement. And so we wanted to make sure that, well, that's the case, we're able to create good jobs in Canada. And so in that context, we were able to showcase that by not only showing an important partnership between Airbus and LOT, which is a Polish airline, but we wanted to make sure that, well, this announcement is made and clearly it shows that we are closer to Europe, that jobs could be created in Canada. And Airbus announced 40 new aircraft, plus an option of 44 aircrafts that would be built in Mirabel, Quebec. And so that's good news. Our Canadian ambassador to Poland has been heavily involved in making sure that this deal could happen. We've been working with the French and Polish governments on this issue, and we know that this is a net benefit to all three countries, Airbus being a French company, Poland being a shareholder in LOT Airlines, and at the same time, the A220 aircrafts being built in Mirabel. So I've been meeting with more than a dozen of CEOs and businesses, and I've been sending the clear message to all CEOs. We're open for business, and now I'm open to take your questions. I'll say that very quickly in French. That way, our colleagues.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like she's lost so much relevance since Trudeau doesn't really have her as a mistress anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I never liked her, but I used to feel a little bit more enthusiasm from her when she was working under Justin Trudeau. And now Mark Carney, not only does he dismiss her in the House of Commons and Parliament, which he did, he shoot her away one time. It's hilarious. Caught on camera. But also when she does these little updates, it's like Carney just sends her away to get rid of her. Like she's being punished for something, which is hilarious. Don't get me wrong. It's absolutely hilarious. Anyways, let's see what else she's got to say here in terms of the questions. She's just speaking some French stuff right now. Here we go.
Hello. I was wondering if
you had any discussions with European officials about buying fighter jets from Europe instead of all of the expensive F-35s we are ordering from the Americans?
Well, I've had conversations with Lockheed Martin, with Boeing. I've had conversations with Saab. I've met with many Canadian companies, CAE, Bombardier, all of them. And so right now, our goal is to make sure that we create jobs in the country. We are able to attract the most investments possible, and we want to make sure that we are working with reliable partners. For the rest, the negotiations and conversations are private, and we are working as a team within the cabinet and, of course, with the Prime Minister on this, but these conversations were really important.
Secondly, I recognize it's an aerospace conference, but since the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, European nations have been trying to diversify their energy supplies, and Canada has been pitching itself as a global energy superpower. Have you learned anything new on your visit there about?
See, that's something I don't understand. How on earth is Canada a global energy superpower? We have the potential to be, but we are not currently anywhere near that title.
Supply routes from Canada, and in particular, have you gotten any concerns expressed about, Alberta's threats of calling a referendum on separating from Canada?
This was not brought up by the different CEOs. What was clear, though, is that thinking of the entire supply chain in aerospace, the conversation regarding critical minerals was also at the core of our different discussions. So what we can do to attract investments, to have access to reliable critical minerals across the country, including, of course, in Alberta, has been at the core of our discussion. We also talked about the investments in titanium, which is key, and it's an investment through also a facility of Rio Tinto in Quebec. And so that was also part of the conversation.
Next question, Kate McKenna.
Come on now.
I'm wondering, at a time when it's uncertain how much the U.S. will keep helping Ukraine, will Canada do more to fill in the gaps in aid?
We said that we have the same position as the European countries do regarding our support to Ukraine. We think that not only does Ukraine need to be able to be at the table to take decision about its own future, but also we need to be there to support Ukraine, because the Ukrainians are fighting for their own freedom, but they're also fighting for ours. And so what you're seeing right now is geopolitics is having an impact on at whom we're doing business and what type of business. And of course, in the context of the defense procurement conversation, supporting Ukraine and having the same vision about how we can address the conflict is important. So I won't comment further on, Kate, what are the geopolitics of it, because of course, Minister of Foreign Affairs will be able to answer your questions. But what is interesting is how much the geopolitical landscape has changed over the past months, where now it is at the core of every single economic and financial decision, and it drives the conversations to be able to land deals with trusted partners.
Thank you so much. Just for my follow-up on the Golden Dome, Donald Trump says he's in talks with Carney on this, Mark Carney, the Prime Minister. Is Canada going to pay to join this proposed defense system?
We have no choice.
And is our participation in that tied in any way to possible tariff relief?
So we'll let the Prime Minister do his work. We've been always clear. We need to make sure that we have a security and trade partnership with the U.S. So I think we should not negotiate in public.
Have you noticed, this is something that I've picked up, But when Canada and Canadian officials have been talking about trade negotiations with America, they didn't used to call it security and trade. It used to only be referred to as trade negotiations. Only recently has Canada started to shift those talking points to be security and trade. And I'm under the impression, very much so, that once Canada starts to invest in the Golden Dome and other defense systems and properties, that the tariffs are going to be removed or heavily reduced. Because again, Canada needs to do more to do our fair share of protecting North America. Not just pledging, not just committing, but actually start building and being prepared for protecting our nation, our earth, right? Our soil. Canada has no defenses. We're very, very vulnerable, and we have one of the biggest land masses in the entire world. So that's obviously a huge problem. Once we start to actually do stuff, I think trade balances will start to happen a little bit more. That's my own personal opinion.
That's not how we've been dealing with the Trump administration. I think that there was a positive meeting that happened in Kananaskis. Meanwhile, on our side here, on the other side of the ocean, we've been making sure that companies understand that Canada is now investing 2% of its GDP quickly, and this is a floor, not a ceiling. So it is an opportunity for us to talk about how we can create jobs in Canada while we're investing in new technology and ultimately making very big investments, the largest since the Second World War. Of course, we need to protect our sovereignty. Of course, we need to look at what can be done on the satellite front. And these are active conversations with many countries, of course, along with the U.S.
Next question, Paul Vieira, please go ahead.
You hear?
Yeah, I can hear you, Paul. Go ahead.
Now that talks, I guess the aim now is for U.S. and Canada to reach a deal in the next 30 days or 29 days, however you count it. Should we take from that if there's no deal within 30 days, that Canada would be ready to respond with retaliation for the doubling of the aluminum and steel tariffs on Canada?
So, Paul, I know that lots of journalists want bits and pieces of the negotiation with the U.S., and clearly that's the aim of your question. And my answer will always be the same. We need to make sure that the Prime Minister is able to do his work and won't negotiate in public. Now, what I can tell you, though, is we will make sure that we are taking decisions in the best interest of Canada as a sovereign nation. And clearly, right now, these tariffs of 50% are not only illegal and justified, they're outrageous. And I've been in contact with many steel CEOs, although I'm on the other side of the ocean, because we need to protect our market, and we'll work on that.
Maybe then, as a follow-up, are you going to be bringing in anything? Are you going to be?
Sorry, Paul, we couldn't hear you well. What did you say at the beginning of the sentence?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you or are officials going to introduce measures that would address concerns about transshipment, i.e. the Chinese dumping of cheap steel and other metals into the Canadian market? Is this something that you or other officials are going to address in order to allay concerns from the Trump administration?
Well, I think that we will not tolerate unfair practices in the steel and aluminum sector or in any other sector, period. That's enough. We can't take it for granted. There can be no loopholes. It's not only the CEOs that are asking for these measures, it's also the labor movement and fundamentally people's jobs we're talking about. So we will make sure that we fight against the outrageous tariffs that have been imposed on our steel and aluminum workers. And at the same time, of course, we'll take measures to make sure that we protect our domestic market and we help companies deal with the crisis as we speak.
Last question from Laura Kane. Please go ahead.
Hi, Laura. Go ahead.
Sorry, Minister. Good morning. So on the steel industry, you have spoken about providing more liquidity to the steel companies. Can you provide any further details on that or an update on those conversations?
So short term, what we've been looking at is really helping to protect our market. Middle term, what we've been looking at is helping companies to have access to liquidities, and it's on a case-by-case basis. And the conversations with key companies in the steel sector have been quite positive. We have already an important program for large companies having liquidity issues, and we also have been working with our regional development agencies to make sure that we're in solution mode. And meanwhile, I think much more long-term, what we're doing is we want to have a stronger domestic market. We want to increase the demand for Canadian steel and aluminum. So we're looking at the different investments that are being made by the Canadian government on the infrastructure front to make sure that there are Canadian steel and aluminum conditions in our major projects. We're looking also at having Canadian steel and aluminum supported through our defense procurement, and we're looking also at making sure that on the Canadian for Canadian steel, aluminum workers and industries, we're able to protect their jobs in the foreign direct investments we're attracting to Canada. So these decisions are being taken as we speak, and I'm convinced that this will help also create a greater demand within Canada and therefore protect jobs. As you can see, Laura, it's a short, middle, and long-term approach, but it's also being able to work on all the levers that the federal government have to make sure that we're protecting jobs.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's enough of that. That was a whole lot of nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, I have now streamed a little bit longer than I normally do for question period. Did a little bit of venturing afterwards. Not something I normally do, especially if I stream before question period begins, but that's where we're going to end it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back for Wednesday's question period tomorrow. Same time. Look forward to seeing you there. On your way out, if you haven't yet already, come on. What are you doing? Hit the like button. Come on. Hit the like button. Subscribe, and I'll see you